Hi everyone, I'm Kathryn Rossati and I'm a middle grade and young adult author. As today is World Book Day, I wanted to read out a few chapters of my latest book, Naturally Nick. I did in another video already read out chapter 1. In this one I'm going to read out chapter 2. And because the book is from the point of view of two different characters, you can watch this video without having listened to chapter 1. So this is chapter 2. Nikolai. Pa's lagging behind again. I bet he's overpacked the case. We only need a hand for props for today's shows. I've told him time and again that Mondays are just for table magic. Why can't he get that into his head? Punters are easy to fool after they've had an extravagant weekend, so we can save our good tricks for later in the week. Come on, Pa, else we'll have no place to mark as our own. Just because we've held the same spot for a few weeks doesn't mean the others will leave it free if we're not there, I shout, knocking aside a bleary-eyed sailor who doesn't seem to realise he's in the middle of the street. He stumbles over the cobbles before landing on his behind. If a carriage doesn't run him over, the morning warehouse workers will. Wonder if he's missed his boat. Serves him right, the drunkard. Not so fast, Nikolai. I can't keep up when you dash around so, Pa calls, his black, silk-lined tailcoat flapping in the wind, as he grabs the tan leather case with both hands, managing to hold it just above the ground. His breath is coming in short gasps, and his skinny legs wobble as if they're about to buckle. He really is struggling. I swing back and heave one side of the case onto my shoulder, balancing its weight between us. We're nearly at the great doors of the octagonal entrance anyway. A few more minutes and we'll be descending into the tunnel. At least it'll be free of visitors at this time of the morning. The only people we'll come across will be other acts setting up their equipment, and maybe a few stallholders. After shouldering one of the doors open, we head towards the tax gatherer. He stares us down until we show our passes, proof that we've already paid the fee for 6 months as performers, despite him seeing us every day for weeks and grudgingly lets us through. As we're carrying equipment, we go by way of the gate instead of the tiny brass turnstile meant for pedestrians, and pass through the single door there. As usual, marble steps greet us, and we make our way down the vertical shaft to the bottom. The tunnel's two archways loom like giant eyebrows, the sound of that stupid steam-powered organ already causing music to echo off them like a horde of trolls. Another day begins. We head down the side reserved for performers, visible from the walkway through cutouts spaced along the partition. And, as I suspected, someone's already attempting to claim our area. It's Frederick, the Magnificent, the other magician who tries his hand at entertaining. Maybe I should put a dent in his top hat. Oi, mind the grease, Fred. You're in our spot, I say, holding the case from Pa's grip and planting it firmly down by my feet. Frederick looks at me scathingly as he finishes fixing up his table and the heavy wardrobe he insists on using for his vanishing and reappearing act. A shoddy trick involving mirrors, and a reveal so quick it's missed if anyone blinks. I suppose it's easy to deceive an audience if they can't get a decent look at what you're doing. My, if it isn't Eli Roberts and his brat. Surely, Eli, you should know better than to let your son accost such a prestigious conjurer as myself, Frederick says, pulling his sweat-stained cuffs down to his wrists from where they've ridden up his arms. I imagine if his mother were alive, she'd have a thing or two to say about how you're raising him. The only thing my ma would say is for you to mind your own business, I snap, seeing Pa's face turn grey at the mere mention of her. Pa steps forward, trying to straighten his own clothing. Honestly, he was proper neat before he left home, but his embroidered waistcoat is twisted to one side, so most of its design is hidden by his jacket, and his trim trousers have dust prints all over them. I've got to brush him off before the crowds come in. My apologies, Frederick, but the boy is right. You are in our space. His voice quivers as he talks. He's never liked confrontation. Frederick laughs and gestures broadly around the tunnel. Can't see any sign declaring it as yours, which, given how gaudy the one you used to use was, I'm thankful for. I think it's safe to say this area is mine to claim. His eyes narrow as he drops his voice. Goodness knows, it's the least you can do for me. Be a good chap and move along. What does he mean by that? Pa doesn't owe him anything. Pa's never owed anyone anything. The smug expression on Frederick's face makes me want to kick him where it hurts, but Pa's flapping his hand at me behind his back, warning me to leave off. Fortunately, I'm not the only bystander. From the store in the cutout opposite us comes a yell like a banshee. Frederick whatever your name is, you gibface, let Mr. Roberts and Nikolai have their spot, and go back to your usual dank side. They've worked here since the fair's opening, and you showed up less than a month ago. Get lost before I chase you down with my silverware collection. My aim's improving by the day, you know. Lydia stands facing us, a selection of her overpriced cutlery spread out like a fan in her hand, aimed threateningly at Frederick to show him her words are far from empty. Even though she's only a few years older than me, the reputation of her volatile, mad-as-hops nature is enough to make Frederick take a few hasty steps back. I sigh. Can't be dealing with all this hassle so early. I've got to get Pa settled into his act before the main wave arrives. Thanks, Sid, but this aspiring toff can keep his spot today. His act is so bad the punters will walk straight past him and head for us instead. He might actually make us look better. I ignore the glare Frederick shoots me and tip my hat to Lydia, who gives an exaggerated curtsy back and returns to laying out her wares on her stool. I pick up our case again and heave it further along the tunnel, making sure Pa's trailing behind. Then, accidentally, or not, bump into Frederick's wardrobe, just enough to knock the mirror inside out of place. Whoops. We skirt past a group of circus performers and fire eaters, fine-tuning their equipment, and finally taking a nice cozy spot by an elderly stallholder, selling supposed mystic curiosities. It'll fit in nicely with Pa's act. I nip over to her and briefly explain what we'll be doing, emphasizing that crowds who watch us usually buy readily from whatever stall we perform near, hence Lydia's keenness to help us earlier. She nods and positions her rickety chair to the side so people will have a better view of what we're doing. I jog back to Pa, and in a few jiffies I've opened the case and whipped up our lightweight table, ready for him to lay out his cards. As he's arranging his decks and warming up his fingers, so they're prepared for all the sleight of hand he has to pull over the course of the day, I dig out a clothes brush and dust him off so that he's presentable as the fabulous Eli Roberts, Conjurer Elite. Ma came up with that name for him when they first met in their heyday. It took a lot of convincing to get him to use it after she died some years ago. I know she wouldn't want him moping around wasting his talents. Besides, we have to make money somehow. We can't all be shoe shiners and crossing sweepers like my older brothers. It's a shame I was too young to see Ma and Pa perform in their prime. My brothers said their skills were amazing, and they used to make up all their own tricks. Now I'm the one who works everything out and keeps up to date with what the famous magicians are up to. Whatever it is they conjure, I want to make it better. But lacking the resources and funding to find any stage bigger than local fairs and penny gaffs, I'm still looking for a way to do it. Pa would really prefer to leave the performing to me, but I'm too proud of my genius to keep my mouth shut about how the magic works. And magicians who blab aren't favoured by their peers. Trust me on that one. The stories I've heard would make grown men shudder. Ready, Pa? I asked, getting out my own smart jacket and brushing off my hat. As well as being the brains, my job is to grab the attention of passers-by so Pa can ensnare them with his act. During it, after each reveal, I go round and collect donations. My brothers always say I should try faking some pokes, but if I get caught, that'd be the end of our act completely. I need the crowd to trust us, and the only way to do that is to be trustworthy. The moment their watches and jewels start disappearing, I'll be suspect. Yes, Nikolai, you can start drawing them in, Pa replies, putting on his top hat. Now he's all set up, I hear confidence in his voice. He's stepped into his role for the day, and believes in himself like he used to. I get a brief touch of the morphs, knowing that once it's over and we pack up, he'll lose that spark. If only I could find a way to permanently restore his faith in himself. Voices, laughter, and footsteps echo down the tunnel, dancing on the organ's incessant music, and joining with the enticements of stallholders, attempting to sell their wares for extortionate prices. Showtime. I clamber up the side of the cutout where the old woman has her stall, careful not to knock her table. My hands clutch the cold stone, while my feet balance on decorative grooves carved into it. Ladies and gentlemen, I bellow, forcing my voice to take on a lyrical air, come and bear witness to the most amazing magic you'll ever see. Watch how the fabulous Eli Roberts, conjurer elite, will baffle your senses and ensnare your minds using only a humble deck of playing cards. I eye a group of posh ladies and a few gentlemen strolling our way, pausing momentarily to watch the tightrope walkers do their warm-up act, but latching onto the earnest in my voice as I go on to describe Pa's wondrous, incredible, impossible, implausible, stupefying skills. Hey, I have a knack for embellishment. I'm closing in on us. Behind me, Pa is doing simple but pleasing card plans and fancy deck cuts to give them something to goggle at. He is even doing my favourite one, which makes it seem as if he's pulling the cards straight from his mouth. When we have a sufficient crowd, and I've warmed them up with my honeyed words, I step aside so Pa can begin his first act. The standard card trick that relies on a story to capture their imagination. In a deeply sonorous voice, a surprising trick in itself, if you've ever heard it before, Pa starts his speech. Once, there was a lonely jester. From his deck, he produces a joker card and displays it for everyone to see, before placing it on the table face down. His one wish was to win the hearts of his peers, but none would take him seriously, he continues, taking a 10 of hearts and placing it face down on top of the joker. Years passed as his every attempt failed, and so, one day, he decided to appeal to the king. At this point, he draws the king of diamonds from the deck, shows it, then replaces it. After being escorted by the guards into the palace and made to wait all day, he says, flicking the top face down card over to reveal that it is no longer the 10 of hearts, but a jack of spades. The king finally took his audience. Here he turns the other face down card over to show the king of diamonds instead of the joker. There's a smashing of claps and appreciative gasps for both expositions, at which point I offer my hat for tips. A number contribute, but not as many as I would like. The king said to the jester that if he completed 3 tasks, then he would be granted a title and be welcomed to court. The first task was to seek out where the king's own diamond crown had gone. Now Pa dips into his deck, seemingly at random, and pulls out the ace of diamonds. He keeps it held up as he goes on. And so the jester searched. He found the crown of hearts. Pa flicks the card, it turns into the ace of hearts. He does it twice more, pausing each time as he explains. The crown of clubs, of spades, but no diamond. Fearful that he would fail in his task, he approached the queen and told her of his dilemma. He flicks the card a final time, and it turns into the Queen of Diamonds. More applause, but I hold off, collecting for a few more beats. Wait for it. She laughed and told him to look where he'd least expect to find it. And so the jester pulled off his own hat. He says, grasping his own top hat, taking a breath, then lifting it. And on his head sat the diamond crown. As the crowd lays eyes on the ace of diamonds on Pa's head, and applauds more enthusiastically this time, I whip around and gather their offerings. There are more people joining by the second. When the jester returned to the king, he was set the second task. Find out where my son goes each night, the king commanded. So, when night fell, the jester searched. Pa makes the joker appear in different positions on the table and in his hands. He checked the palace grounds and saw a boy walking through the orchard. He pauses and turns the joker into the Jack of Diamonds. But when he looked again, the boy was gone. He gives it a flick, and the card goes blank. More coins rain down into my hat. He checked the kitchens, wondering if the boy had taken any apples to have them cooked. All he found were chefs busy preparing dishes for a 7-course banquet the next evening. Pa continues, throwing the cards up in an arc, only to catch it again as the 7 of diamonds. Another throw, and this time the joker reappears. Once again, worried that he would fail his task, the joker turned to the queen for help. Yet she gave the same reply as last time. Look where you'd least expect to find him. So the jester went to the prince's room. A quick flick of the wrist shows the Jack of Diamonds in his hand next to the joker, before going blank. The room appeared empty, he says, as a few people lean in, completely wrapped. But then a section of the wall opened up to reveal a hidden room, from which the prince then stepped out of. That's my cue. I gasp at the wall behind the crowd, pointing. Everyone turns to see the Jack of Diamonds stuck firmly to the stone. I'm more than smug when I hear murmurs of incredulity. The man goes over to the card and plucks it up, examining it all over. One of the things I made sure Pa does during his acts is to give the audience opportunity to check out the cards for any apparent deception. It amazes them all the more when they see it's just a normal playing card. As practiced, Pa does a few cuts with the deck and other fancy tricks, while they take their time turning back to him. When he has their attention once more, he carries on, though not before asking the man who's holding the jack to check it again. I have to keep my amusement hidden as the man cries out. The card's now blank. Thank you for holding on to that for me, sir, Pa says, indicating for me to take the blank card from the stunned man and pass it over to him. Now, in the morning, the jester returned to the king to be given his final task. This time, you must find my queen. She went off at dawn and hasn't been seen since. As usual, the jester began his search around the palace, finding many lovely maidens. Pa takes his time flicking 3 other queens into his hands from thin air. But none were his queen. He didn't despair, knowing that if he could speak to her, she'd tell him to look where he least expected to find her. And so he left the palace and walked to the village, searching the market streets for Her Highness. There, conversing with the loveliest lady, Pa says, this time taking a few steps forward to approach a young woman at the front, who blushes profusely. He found her. He asks the lady to check under her fancy brooch, and there she finds the Queen of Diamonds. She utters a small gasp, and Pa instructs her to hold it up for all to see, before taking the card and going back to his table. With one more grand flourish, he says, "Thus the jester completed his final task. The king had no choice but to honour his word, making the humble jester a lord and member of his court. The king, queen, and jack of diamonds appear in a fan formation in his hand, along with the joker. The applause drowns out even the noise of the organ. I can already feel this is going to be a good day."